Hi everyone, Tadina here from Immigrant Finance. We are going to be speaking today about knowing your rights as an immigrant or as a family member of an immigrant. And we have a special guest joining us today, Leah Landaverde. So while we wait for her to come join us, if you're listening, thank you for taking the time to come listen tonight. I know y'all are busy, and so taking this time out for yourself to learn about your rights, whether it's for you or for your family members, is really means a lot, and we really appreciate it because it's how we're going to get stronger together, right? Okay, I see Leah's here. She's joining us. Let's see, she's coming on. It's been a while since I've done a live on IG. Leah, hello.
Hi, how are you?
So excited to see your face. How are you doing?
Good. I am just making sure I have like a white screen so I have more light on my face. So that's why you might see maybe I'll take these off so you don't see the blue.
Oh, you're fine. You look great. It's great to see you. How have you been?
I've been good. Really just, really working on mindset work and just the back end, really, honestly, of the business. You know how it is.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. For everybody who's listening, you all know, I talk about mindset all the time. So does Leah. Like, this is such an important thing, but that's a whole other topic. So today we're going to be talking about knowing your rights as an immigrant, and we can talk about really whatever you want to know. I'd really encourage you to put questions in the comments. Leah is a total expert on finances, and she is a child of immigrants, so she's got personal experience she can share. Oh, thank you for the sweet messages. And I'm happy to share some kind of knowledge as like an immigration lawyer on this stuff. I don't talk a lot about immigration law stuff in this space, but I think tonight we're going to get into it. So yeah, where do you want to start?
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you, and to those who join and don't know about IDIN, please like support IDIN and Immigrant Finance. This is one of my go-to pages to get like feedback and information on what's going on within our community, and also just like mindset work, and especially with the services you offer and everything. It really, like, I felt like when I first started this journey, there wasn't a lot of resources for the immigrant community, and no one wanted to talk about the immigrant experience, right? And, that's something that we can't erase. And I was glad that there was someone who was already doing it and trying to provide resources for the immigrant community. So I'm very honored to have gotten to know you and have you as part of my network and a friend as well. And I really do love you. People who join, please follow Immigrant Finance, because they really are doing the work.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much for all that support. And I feel the same way about you. Like, you've been doing incredible work, and you're so brave and vulnerable and authentic, which is really hard to find online. Right? Like, so many people are trying to be perfect, and you just tell it how it is, and you're talking about issues people really need to hear. So thank you for being a leader in that. And wow, it's so exciting to see all these folks joining. Thank you all so much for being here. All right, so if you all have questions, put them in the chat. We'll make sure to cover them. Anything on your rights as an immigrant is on the table for tonight. Leah, is there anything you want to start off with or highlight for people listening?
Yeah, so I think, we want to have this conversation and say, we wanted to have this conversation and talk about the rights as an immigrant, financially and just legally as well, because we know these conversations aren't held. They're not talked about often. If it isn't us discussing them in private with our own lawyers, we're going to protest on our rights. So I really wanted to host a conversation where we can talk about, what happens as an immigrant, legally to protect yourself, while also financially protecting yourself, because there is no financial map for the community, but also there isn't no legal, like, they're not given the Constitution. Like, I literally was given the Constitution in 5th grade, and I was told to memorize it.
That's amazing. By who?
By my elementary school. Like, there was a program where I was supposed to, like, you're supposed to know all the presidents, you're supposed to know the Constitution, what's it called, something of independence, Articles of Independence, something like that, I remember.
I love it. That's actually a great opening, I think, for the conversation, because at some point I wanted to cover some like basic constitutional rights people have. So are you guys ready to get into the Constitution tonight? Are we gonna make it fun and sexy? Like
The
right?
Constitution, like the last time I read up on the Constitution, like I said, I think I took a political science class in my undergrad, and we were going over the Constitution and everything and how things were put in place. And I'm just like, gosh, this is a lot.
Yes, it's a lot. We're gonna keep it really basic, but there's some basic things I want to cover. Everyone needs to know, whether it's for you as an immigrant or a family member, loved ones, in your community. There's some basic things that everybody's got to memorize and just own their rights, because regardless of your immigration status, you have rights under the Constitution as a person in the US, okay? You've got rights that are separate from immigration laws that come from the Constitution, which is like the highest form of law. And you guys are gonna hear me I'm gonna start to nerd out. This is so embarrassing. I have really avoided talking about law on this channel. Have you noticed? There's like not much. I like give some like immigration law updates, but I've stayed away. But in my day job, I'm an immigration attorney, and I dork out about stuff all the time. So I'm really excited.
I'm loving it. I'm ready to learn with you.
I'm like nervous because it's like my worlds are merging, guys. I try to keep them separate, but we got to get this information out. And props to Leah, who's like always, thinking of her community, and she brought up this idea to do something on your rights as an immigrant. And so this you get all the credit for this. But okay, number one, if an immigration agent comes to your door and they knock, do not open the door. That's the number one thing. You have a right to not open that door unless there is a warrant, okay? Anybody listening, if you know what a warrant is, put in the comments. We're gonna have some quizzing, I guess. So for a warrant, it has to be, it's basically like an order from a federal judge, okay, that has, because this is ICE, it's federal, it has to have like a signature of the judge and be official. So sometimes ICE, so ICE is the immigration agency, you all know, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Sometimes they will put a paper and call it a warrant or make it seem like it's a warrant. Yes, whoever, M. Guzman 0283 has to be signed by a judge. That's correct. Somebody here knows their rights. So sometimes they'll put a paper and they'll make them imply it's a warrant, but it's not actually a warrant because it's not signed by a judge. So do not open the door. The only reason you have to open the door is if they have a signed warrant by a judge, okay? So if they make it seem like they have it, you can say through the door, slide it under the door, or show me in the window. I want to see it. You have a right to do that. Doesn't matter what your status is or where you're from or any of that. Does anybody have questions on this first one? Or Leah, anything you want to add from personal experience?
So someone just asked, does it apply the same for residential home versus a business?
I don't like to answer questions I'm not positive on, so I'm not sure. I would think so, but I'm really not sure at this time. But there are very different rules with immigration raids at businesses.
Mm-hmm.
But even in that scenario, I believe there does have to still be a warrant, and that's something they often don't have. So educate your boss or managers who are citizens about that. If you want to confirm that with me, just send me a message. I'm happy to look that up and confirm it.
Yeah, I do have a question with what you said, because I have faced instances in my own family's lives and also heard of stories of just ICE agents jumping into homes without, like, barging in. Obviously, it happens with many other communities as well, but, just ICE barging in and just taking people,
Yeah, and a lot of the reason is people don't know that they have a right to not open the door. But I hear you. I mean, one of my very favorite clients, he opened the door even though he knew he didn't have to, because his children were sitting there crying and hearing them bang down the door, and they were doing terrible shit and throwing stuff at the window. It gets really nasty. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too dark on Thursday night here, but just know you have a right to ask for that warrant and to not open the door. The second you open that door, even if it's like a little creak, all bets are off. So that is a major boundary and form of power you have under the US Constitution, that no matter what your status is. Okay, everybody got that down.
Yeah.
If you got it, put a 1 in the comments so we know you got us.
Or an emoji.
Emoji, yes. Something more fun, thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Second one is you don't have to answer any questions from an immigration agent if they talk to you. So if they kind of are like trying to talk to you on the street, oh yes, I'm seeing emojis, I love it. Or if they're maybe standing outside when you go to work, right, or something like that. You don't have to answer any questions. You have the right to remain silent. That comes from the Fifth Amendment, right? You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to say, I want to have a lawyer present, right? And they have to respect that. So yes, Leah is adding on the chat. Thank you. Anything you want to add on that for people?
Yeah, no, I think, I've seen multiple videos on social media, and I'm glad that people do record, please record any instance, in my opinion, of anything that's going on. But also if they do ask questions, be like, you don't have any right to ask me any of these questions. Like, I don't know you. I mean, like, obviously, like, they try to intimidate us, and that fear is really instilled in that trauma, right? So I understand if when this happens, it's fight or flight, right?
Absolutely.
But really try not to say as much, like you said, please, say, I would like to have a lawyer present. Quiero tener un abogado frente, like say in Spanish, I really want you to make sure that you feel like, even if that's, I think about it in church. I'm going to apply it like this. Like when I was a kid, my parents said, if you ever felt scared or you ever felt like a demon presence, like say que Dios reprende al diablo, right? Like I have that like memorized in my head. But use it the same way. Like I would like a lawyer present. Absolutely. I plead the fifth.
Yeah, and this is the same for criminal law too. If it's the police, if it's local police, it doesn't have to be ICE that we're just talking about. Like you have a right to not self-interrogate and to not self-incriminate, and then to have a lawyer present. Same thing if they ask you to sign something. This is really big, where sometimes there's terrible ICE agents that will try to get people to sign documents agreeing to their deportation. This happened a lot under the Trump administration. Do not sign anything until you talk to a lawyer, especially if you don't understand it. I cannot tell you how many people I've worked with who made the worst decision of their life signing something. And if you are feeling desperate, right, ask for time to talk to a lawyer so you can make an informed decision about what rights you're giving up, and anything you sign, whether to appeal an immigration case, whatever. Make sure it's well thought out and you're thinking about the long-term consequences. Also, let's see, so okay, if they're trying to if their police or ICE are trying to search your car, right? Or they stop you and they're trying to search your pockets, right? Remember the whole stop and frisk thing in New York? That was really big. This is very complicated constitutional law stuff, but basically the way you find out if you're under arrest is if you say, am I free to leave? If they say no, we're going to the territory where you may be under arrest and you start to have less constitutional protections. But if you are not at that point and they're just kind of racially profiling you, right, or trying to fish for things that could give them a reason to arrest you, that's a very powerful thing you can do, is just very calmly say, am I free to leave right now, right? And they have to say yes if you're not under arrest. Does anybody have questions on that or anything we've covered so far?
Yeah, feel free to ask anything that you have, any questions you have regarding this. I mean, this is for transparency purpose, because we usually hide these conversations at home. One thing that I know I've talked about with Adina is essentially, I remember when there was raids in my community, and my family and I were hiding in basements, and we knew the basic things that we knew were essentially make sure the door is locked, close all the windows, and just go downstairs and we'll just hang out like nothing, And it's kind of I can't believe I went through that. Like, it was like almost like this little bunker moment, you know?
Girl, I'm so sorry.
Like, you know, it's crazy to think about that, but you know, raids do happen. Like I've seen it with my own eyes. I've heard of it. Like it really isn't. It's overwhelming when it happens, but please, 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 like, you know, like what we've been saying right now. Know these. You know, these are your constitutional rights. At the end of the day, you still are obligated. You have the same rights as a citizen at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, and if you want an easy way to remember these, if you just Google, I think it's like immigration red cards. It should come up first thing, but if not, look at the website for ilrc.org. They have these little cards that you can print off and put in your wallet that say all the things I just went over.
What's the link?
Go to ilrc.org/red-cards, and they have them in Arabic, Chinese, French, Hmong, Korean, Spanish, Tagalog, and Vietnamese.
Okay.
Is
that?
It's red-cards, not slash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
No worries. But if you just Google like immigrant rights red cards, it should be one of the first things that come up. So that's a great resource. Also, the ACLU, if you go type in like ACLU immigrants rights videos, they have a ton of videos that they're really cool. They're animated and they like walk you through a whole scenario. So there's one on like what to do if ICE knocks on your door, and they'll like walk you through every step of it. So that's a good thing to check out too.
Thank you, Adina, for all these resources. That's super helpful because even, you know, whoever listens, we can put them in the comments in the caption of this video as well. So I know not only is it like our constitutional rights that we feel we don't have, especially as, you know, the immigrant community and even child of immigrants who want to be aware for their parents, you know, there's also financial rights that you do have as well that I did want to discuss today, because obviously I talk dinero and I want to make sure that because like the one thing that I have noticed is that the immigrant community does not feel like they can save money, you know, invest, open a credit card, because they don't have those resources, right? Obviously, the biggest fears that they face, we've talked about this before, is just like not having rights. Like at the end of the day, you know, when I talk to my clients who are immigrants, my family who are immigrants, you know, the immigrant community, everyone feels that they don't have a right to what they have, you know, ownership of their wealth, ownership of their careers, ownership of their lives, because they feel like at any minute, everything can be taken away. And I grew up with that fear. I grew up with that fear of any minute my parents would be gone one day. So I understand that feeling of terror, you know. So we want to just make sure you know your rights, your basic constitutional rights, but also your financial rights. So
absolutely.
So I know you work with the immigrant community and with finances as well, and so do I. But I want to ask you, what are the first things that you would recommend someone as an immigrant in the U.S. to have financially?
Yeah, well, just first of all, like, I'm so sorry again that you had to go through all that, and anybody listening who's gone through similar stuff, it's so fucked up, and the system is so inhumane and violent, and like it needs to change. So I just had to say that. But for your question in terms of finances, what people can do, so there's so many things you can do. So let me back up and just explain how the financial system is different, if that's cool. Because for me, that like addresses a lot of the fears. And I have exciting news to share on that I haven't announced before yet on this topic. Okay, so when you do something financially, the way you're interacting with the US government is through the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, where taxes are paid, right? So if you have a bank account, invest, like any earnings you make is going to be reported, right? And you'll have to be paying taxes and all that. And so a lot of people are understandably very afraid to participate in the financial system because they're afraid of giving their information to the government, of course, right? Especially if you're undocumented, like, why would you do that, right? But here's the thing, the IRS has privacy laws in place where they are forbidden under law from sharing people's information with other agencies. When I learned this, it like changed everything because they literally cannot share your information with ICE. So there is a limited exception if someone has a criminal, like serious criminal offense and it's relevant, their taxes are relevant, so like a fraud offense, something like that, then the information could be shared, right? But as a general rule, the vast majority of people's information is not shared. And I actually talked to someone at the IRS I just connected with recently. I had a whole hour conversation where he went into great detail about how they cannot even share people's tax information with their colleagues in the IRS. Like they literally can only talk to like their manager about it and not their colleagues. There's such serious privacy protections. And if you think about it, the whole basis of the US government, this is gonna get really heavy, is only possible if they receive taxes, right? It's not a business, they don't make money, they make money through taxes. And there are millions of undocumented immigrants who pay taxes and that the government makes a lot of money off of, that they need to function. So if they have no incentive to make people feel uncomfortable doing that, right? If anyone listening is like, yeah, I know either taking my taxes, I'm not getting benefits. I know it's messed up, right? And the whole system is rigged. That's a whole nother conversation. But basically, I'm going off and on. Please interrupt me if you have anything you want to add on. Let me pause. Do you have anything you want to add on this? Because I'm gonna go nuts on this topic.
Yeah, no, I'm obsessing over you obsessing over this, honestly, because it makes me really happy, because these are the type of conversations we need to be having for our community. You know, obviously financial experts and immigration lawyers, and you are also a financial expert yourself, you know, who specifically works for this community. So those who have joined, we're talking about knowing your rights as an immigrant. We just talked about most of your constitutional rights, but now we're kind of demything the whole IRS relationship with, you know, being an immigrant here. So
Yeah.
I know someone put in the comments that, you know, this is a powerful conversation, because at the end of the day, transparency needs to be, you know, like available for everyone. We need to be able to have these conversations without fear and know exactly what's going on from a financial perspective. Because one of the biggest things that I hear and see is, you know, why am I going to build wealth when it can be taken away from me?
Yeah, taken away in terms of taxes or
no, just like they feel like ICE or the government will take their money because they are an immigrant.
Right. Yeah, so the government has a very strong incentive to make sure undocumented immigrants feel comfortable paying taxes because they need that money. So that's why, I mean, has anybody ever heard of anyone having an immigration problem because they were paying taxes? I never have, and I've been an immigration attorney for almost 10 years, right? Never heard of it, because of those privacy protections. Now, last thing on this, like, yes, theoretically, they could change that law for those privacy protections, and that could change. Like, nothing is guaranteed. We saw crazy things happen under the Trump administration, but not even this came up under the Trump administration. It never came up, right? So they would need to pass a new law getting rid of those privacy protections in order to start sharing information with ICE. And to pass a new law, for my government nerds here with me, you all know it's really hard to do that. Like the government right now, I talked to someone in Congress today for my day job. They are racing to pass a budget right now so the government doesn't shut down this weekend. They can't even do that. They can't even pass a budget, right? And so to change a new law, they would have to have the majority of the Senate, the majority of House Representatives, the president would have to sign off on it, right? So this is extremely unlikely. I mean, I just want to explain that because it is theoretically possible. Like it's not a zero risk situation, but that's how hard it would be. So I say all this because this is why people shouldn't be afraid to invest. Because when you invest, you have to share your information with the IRS, right? You have to report for tax purposes and all of that. Someone's asking, can you invest in an IRA with a fake social security number? That is a complicated question. Please reach out to me and we can discuss that further. That is a complicated one there. In general, if you have an ITIN and you're paying taxes with the ITIN, that's a great option to use to invest. Yeah, so, okay, so back to your question. Now that we have the context, like some things you can do now that you all know you can participate in the financial system, open a bank account, right? Don't keep your money in cash under a mattress. Do you want to add anything on that? I'm talking a lot.
No, I love that you're talking. I love it. No, I was gonna say just the first step. I think I know you mentioned it is the ITIN, so it's the identification, tax number, right?
Individual tax identification number.
Yeah. So essentially, make sure you have your ITIN in place, and then you can open a bank account right after that. And at the end of the day, my biggest thing is when you open a bank account, make sure it's FDIC insured,
right? Because
that's very important, just so you feel comfortable, because a lot of people say, oh, I'll lose my money at the bank as well. But the thing is, banking institutions, like a majority of them are FDIC insured. So what does that mean? You are covered up to $250,000 on every single bank account. So that is in your name, essentially, even on joints.
Yeah. And I see Nilda Lorenzado is asking how to get an ITIN. So you get an ITIN, it's a one-page form. I believe it's called W7. You can Google on the IRS website. And you do have to file a tax return to get an ITIN. So that's something you have to do. But some people will file tax returns to get the ITIN and report that they have zero income. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to pay taxes if you don't have income. But it is a very important step, because once you have that ITIN, you can open a bank account, you can get a credit card and start building credit and a credit score. You can invest, right? You can get a mortgage loan. It really opens the doors. So yeah, if anyone has questions on that, let us know. So I would say back to the bank account thing, this is so important, and for the FDIC insurance to dig into that. So what that means is most banks in the US have, you want to check that they have it, like Leah said, but what it means is if that bank goes bankrupt, or there's a Great Depression or something like that, and you have the FDIC insurance in your bank, the federal government will insure up to $250,000 of your money. They'll give it back to you if the bank can't. And this is something that doesn't exist in a lot of countries. So a lot of folks in the immigrant community, they come from countries that don't have things like this, where banks can't be trusted. So like my husband, Mao, when he was growing up, there was a year in Ecuador where the economy collapsed. They had to switch to the dollar. There were like 10 presidents in 1 year, and all the bankers took everyone's money and fled to Miami. And all these people lost their life savings, right? And there's nothing the government could do about it. So that kind of thing can't happen here because of FDIC insurance, as long as you have that FDIC insurance. So that's why it's so important. So like, it's actually more risky to keep your money in cash, right? Because there could be a fire, you could get robbed, right? All that. Next thing is get a credit card, but make sure you know how to use credit card responsibly, so you don't go into a lot of debt, right? But it's important to get that credit card so you can start building a credit score, so that you can take advantage of opportunities to build wealth, like buy property, get a mortgage loan. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think someone asked in the comments again, if you could be an immigrant to get an ITIN. Yes, that's the main reason why we're saying this, is because ITIN can open the opportunity, like the doors to the opportunity of building your wealth, right? Exactly. Now this is in your name, right? Essentially, one thing that I did want to add about building credit is essentially there's this fear, right, of building credit, debt and collections, because that's how most of us have established a relationship with it, right? With building credit, it's like we have debt, we have collections, we have bills, right? So I just wanted to say, like, one of the main things that I always preach is, again, forgive yourself for what you've done in the past, because you didn't know any better. But from this moment on, we're telling you, we're giving you awareness and transparency into the system that obviously wasn't made for us. It wasn't made for us to succeed in. It wasn't made for us to conquer. So we want you to conquer. So in order with conquering this, there's a certain level of responsibility you have to have with your finances. It's ownership, right? This is your money. This is your wealth that we're putting in your, you're putting in your own hands, right? And you should be trusted with it, right? So when we're talking about credit, essentially it's more about, okay, you're given this opportunity to build credit so that you can build wealth with buying a home, right? With buying your own car or whatever it might be that you might buy with credit. But the most important thing that I want to say is know that debt is part of the process of building wealth. Okay.
Absolutely.
Like it is part of the process, and we have such a negative relationship with debt. But like I said, if we can make these payments to our debt, then there's no, at the end of the day, we can build wealth because let me tell you, multimillionaires, they call debt leverage. They call debt margin. They live off of it. They live off this debt to make more money. So I'm just saying, this is your opportunity to practice with credit, right? So pay it off. Make sure you always make sure your minimums are are paid, even if you don't have for the full balance. But at the end of the day, credit is a relationship that you're given to build trust with the financial system. That's really what it is at the end of the day. That's how they judge you.
It's a great way to put it. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Wealthy people are going to debt constantly to make more money. They buy properties on debt. That's what mortgages are, so that they can then rent them out and have cash flow coming in and not have to work, right? They go into debt to scale their businesses to make more. That's how people are making millions in their businesses. We have to do another one about debt, because there's way too much shame and guilt out there about debt. Someone asked about, would an ITIN be a loophole to apply for an IRA? So yes, you can use an ITIN to apply for an IRA or invest in any other way, but I wouldn't think of it as a loophole, because you have a right to do it. So back to the theme for tonight, know your rights. You're not doing something sketchy or cheating the system. You have a right to do it. People do it all the time. We helped over 40 people open investment accounts with ITINs, right, last year. So you can do it. It's not a loophole. Someone else asked about 401k versus property. Do you want to address that one?
Yeah, so I say all. Why not?
That's what I'm
diversify your assets, diversify your investments, right? You want to make sure you have multiple, wealth being created in multiple, avenues, because at the end of the day, if you put your money in different avenues, it reduces the overall risk of your portfolio, your wealth portfolio, your wealth journal, whatever you want to call it, so diversify always. Whatever you feel comfortable. At the end of the day, you build wealth for you. We don't define what wealth is and the success of wealth. You do at the end of the day.
Couldn't agree more. The only thing I'd add is we got to get out of this either or thinking, right? Leah's response is perfect. Why not both? Right? And we're often taught, you can only have one thing, or you don't deserve it all, but you all deserve it all. There's no reason you don't compared to other people. Someone asked if the ITIN number changes when you become a resident. So I think you're talking about becoming a lawful permanent resident, also known as a green card. Yes, you would, in that situation, someone would get a social security number and start using that. If anyone has more questions about ITINs, we've got an article about how to apply on our website at immigrantfinance.com/ITIN. Check it out.
I'm gonna put it in the chat while you do that.
Oh, thank you. Should we get into mindset, or is there more financial stuff you want to talk about?
I did want to talk about entrepreneurship as a way of building wealth. I did want to mention that.
Go for it.
So a lot of people believe that you can't start your own business as an immigrant. And let me tell you, you can. And honestly, you can get paid through your business with your ITIN, because you can use your ITIN to create your LLC or whatever your partnership, whatever it might be, and grow wealth through there and pay yourself through there, and even have your own 401k through your business, as well as have your own IRA, SEP IRA, which is another investment retirement account, but for business owners. So what I'm saying here is, as an entrepreneur, you can have the same thing that you would have with an employer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say that starting a business is the most important and viable way to build wealth if you are undocumented or if you're in between statuses or maybe losing your status, because all of the laws and regulations around immigration and work permits are really about being an employee. They're limiting your ability to be an employee. They're not limiting your ability to have a business. There's nothing saying that immigrants can't have businesses. So there's nothing illegal about it. And that's a message we really need to get out there, because not only is that a legal, way to make money if you don't have status, right? But it's also the best way to build wealth, because then there's no cap on your income, right? In a 9-to-5 job, you can negotiate your salary, you can get raises and promotions, but there's always going to be a cap. Whereas when it's your own business, you set the limit, right? So I think even if we weren't talking about immigration law stuff, like we would probably both be recommending that anyway. And if you look at wealthy people, most of them have investments in the stock market, real estate properties, and businesses. They've got all three usually, or at least a few of those.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there's a question here that do you need to have an LLC or S corp to start a SEP? Yes, so you do have to have your business registered to have your SEP IRA or your solo 401k. So you do have to have your EIN number for the business. So someone also asked, I need to start a business. What's the best business to start? Honey, whatever you're good at, whatever you want, like at the end of the day, no, there's no bad business. Whatever you feel like you're gonna hustle and grow on yourself, there's no bad business. Whatever is yours is yours. Emancipation. There's this term that I heard on a podcast is emancipation through entrepreneurship, because we are literally becoming free from white supremacy and capitalism by literally starting our own businesses and funding our own local communities and supporting our own and literally creating our own generational wealth through our businesses.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, think about like what comes effortlessly to you naturally, like whatever your gifts are. Every person, I believe, has gifts that are unique to them. That is probably where you're going to make the most money, because it won't feel like work, right? You'll love doing it. So what do you feel excited about? And also think about like, what problems are there? That's another thing wealthy people are constantly thinking about, that in this community folks need to consider is like, and actually immigrants are amazing at this. What am I talking about? Immigrants
we know how to figure something out. We know problems and we figure them out in seconds, but the thing is, we don't think we can figure it out for ourselves. We think we can figure it out for all these other people but ourselves. And it's like, no, like at the end of the day, like we can build wealth and we can figure out our own problems and service our own community and start our own business.
Yeah, like look at what problems you see and how can you provide a solution. Those are the best businesses. So I was talking to one of our students the other day, and she was having trouble figuring it out. And she started mentioning how, she likes translating, and she thought she had to go get this license and all this stuff and like do this class. I'm like, okay, fine, you can do that, but like, who needs a translation right now in your community? And then she started being like, oh, I guess I have like 1,000 Facebook friends, and like I'm really well connected in my community, and I could probably just post right now. I'm like, yeah, you started a business, you solved the problem. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. It really doesn't. Someone asked about how can I get a 401k? We just started our business, but I want to make sure my husband has a retirement plan. So 401k is actually through an employer. It's a type of investment account through an employer as a benefit, but there's other types of investment accounts you can open on your own.
The solo 401k, I think, is what she's referring to. So the solo 401k, you can start with Fidelity or any brokerage, essentially like Vanguard as well. But I 100% support Fidelity for the reason that they do take ITIN too. So you can open an IRA. Yeah. Oh, and so does Vanguard. Okay, cool. So I like Fidelity because it's really easy, and their support system is really helpful. So they helped me set up my solo 401k for my business, my retirement plan for my business. And they do have a Spanish department too. So you can also leverage that for Fidelity or whatever brokerage. But yeah, you can use Fidelity, Vanguard. Some robo-advisors offer employer, like your own business, like a solo 401k or a SEP IRA, which these two are essentially, if you are an entrepreneur in a business, you could have one. But you would have to do your research on that as well. So just make sure you study what would be best for you.
Yeah, I think back to the topic again, knowing your rights, like a lot of this is about learning to become a financial advocate for yourself, and like picking up the phone and calling that company and asking them.
Yeah.
Right. And like being a smart consumer. It's scary, and the investing is really intimidating for people. I know it was super intimidating for us when we started. But you got to be your own best advocate, right? Like even if you were to work with Leah or I, like we would help guide you through it. But at some point, you know, we're both going to want you to be like confident, you know,
in your own decisions.
Exactly. Yeah. So it helps to start small and early. Like just start even with your bank. Like if you get a weird fee, you're not sure, just call up the bank and be like, why did I get that fee? Can you reverse it? You know, there's little things like that you can do that start to change your psychology of your rights as a financial consumer.
I mean, like that literally, I think right there is being able to defend yourself and have a voice, because that is one of the biggest fears that, and limiting beliefs that the immigrant community, even first gen community, have, is not having a voice to amplify ourselves. You know, I feel like I can amplify voices of others, but can I also amplify my own voice? And it starts actually with yourself, really. If you can defend yourself and ask for help, that's a problem here. We don't like asking for help because we're scared, right? Please ask for help. That's why they have customer service lines, right? So if you don't understand something, and if Google's not explaining it, then leverage that company's customer service.
Absolutely. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, like that same skill of like knowing you don't have to open the door, right? Or be like, show me the warrant. It's just like standing up for yourself and knowing your rights. So this is actually weaving together really nicely. Yeah, I love it. Should we get into a little bit of mindset stuff?
Yeah, let's do it. I love it.
Okay. Do you want to take a stab at connecting the mindset stuff to your rights?
Yeah, no, I think naturally, right? I think about how my parents tell me their journey to the US and how they migrated, and just this fear of you are considered a second-class citizen, right? You're considered, from media, society, immigrants, you know, immigrants this, immigrants that, right? And it's honestly terrible. The way they associate our community is disgusting. Mm-hmm. But the way I have to think about it is, our people, like the immigrant community, is building this nation at the end of the day. At the end of the day, we have the power. At the end of the day, like, our mind is traumatized by all these experiences that we've had, right, in society. And it just makes us feel like, you know, we don't have enough, or we won't be enough, which in the mindset work, there's two types of mindsets, but there's multiple money disorders and a lot of things like from the brain that happen because of our traumas. At the end of the day, this is the source of trauma, right? The mindset, the way we believe, it's like, this is immigration trauma. Like, my family walked by foot, you know, like my parents walked by foot at young ages. My mom was, you know, 15, 16, and my dad was 18, 19. They migrated through like 4 countries, you know what I mean? Like the fact that they did that by themselves at young ages, you know, and that trauma in itself is, it's heavy. So when we think about even coming to the US, and when I think about my parents, I'm just like, no wonder they were scared. No wonder that like they accumulated debt, because how could they not? You know, they didn't know any better. They've naturally been in survival mode. You know, we've all been in survival mode because at the end of the day, we didn't know any better. We didn't know how to breathe because there was no room for us to breathe. But that's why there's scarcity mindset and abundance mindset. And most immigrant communities are even just, we don't even have the ability to enter an abundance mindset because we're automatically put in a scarcity.
Yeah, and like for anyone that's going through that, I mean, hear us loud and clear, like it is not your fault. A lot of this is systemic from the systems, a lot of it is from the laws that are very intentionally designed the way they are. I'm saying, Lucy adding, we need to stop debt, shame, and also teach our community that not all debt is bad. Totally. Yeah, thank you for adding that. But it's not your fault. And so that can, I find for people that can be empowering to understand, like, this isn't because I'm a bad person or because I'm not good enough or I'm not smart enough to figure out finances. Like when you can start to realize this is happening to a lot of people, not the only one. And like that was huge for us when we went through it. You know, I'm not immigrating. I went through this with my husband when he immigrated here in 2013 and saw how he was impacted by the system and everything. And it was like,